So it seems that all the points values from the new Chaos Codex have leaked out. Legionaries are 18 points, the new Possessed are 28, several units are gone from the Codex, and there's some interesting new bits of war gear floating around. Hello and welcome back to Warspets Tactics, where today we're talking Chaos once more. And as seems to be fairly standard for Games Workshop these days, large tracts of the book have made their way onto the internet. People have been posting and discussing about the full points changes from the Codex online, and there's some interesting stuff indeed. At time of recording, the new Chaos Codex still hasn't been announced when it's actually coming out, though I wouldn't be too surprised if it goes up for pre-order either next weekend or the one after. I feel like it's fairly soon if we're seeing this kind of leak come out. The most interesting pages that leaked are full point breakdowns. We're still yet to know a lot of the details as to how the Codex is going to function, but knowing the points cost for every single unit and bit of war gear is handy. It shows some things that are options, some things that are no longer are, and gives us a rough feel as to how the Codex is going to function. I thought maybe we'd talk through some of the biggest takeaways first, and then go through each section of the Codex bit by bit, and talk about any interesting clues from these leaked sections. So first up, let's talk about some of the biggest and most interesting changes. As a general trend throughout the Codex, pretty much points costs have gone up across the board. That really isn't by any means bad news though. It tends to happen with most 9th edition codexes. Generally what tends to happen is that points costs are increased slightly, but the abilities of the units are increased far beyond that, so in general the models tend to be far stronger than they were before. I think maybe Chaos Space Marines are a particularly big example. All the Demon engines are going to hitting on 3s, the Chaos Marines are getting extra wounds and extra attacks, and if the Chaos Lord and Sorcerer are anything to go by, then it looks like they're going to be getting some pretty mighty stat boosts as well. Perhaps some of the most interesting points costs are the new Accursed Cultist and the Dark Covenant squad. They're the main two new units for the release. The Accursed Cultists are 6 points for the Little Mutants and 15 points for the Torments, which does seem like a pretty reasonable cost for those guys. I have a feeling that just on raw stats alone they are looking kind of strong. The Dark Covenant Command Squad is 100 points. That one's rumoured to have a mini Psyker, a mini Dark Apostle, and a couple of useful cultist command abilities, and again that could be kind of interesting depending on the rest of the rules. Again, tying in well with those previous rumours, there are plenty of units that are just gone from the Codex. 3 of the 4 flavours of the main Cult Marines are gone. Plague Marines, Rupert Marines and Khorne Berserkers are all elsewhere. Only the Noise Marines remain, and it's rumoured that within the Codex there will be rules for fielding them from their datasheets from the other books. On the one hand, I guess it makes sense that they would use the rules from their own legions, so you don't have multiple copies of the same datasheet floating around. But on the other hand, it's pretty annoying if you did just have one squad of those and you wanted to use them. Not very helpful to have their rules in a different book altogether. Khan the Betrayer has also been farmed out to the World Eater's White Dwarf supplement, which we talked about on the channel about a week back. And there are a couple of other disappearances as well. The normal Fallen datasheet is gone, though Cypher seems to remain. I wonder if maybe you just are supposed to use standard Chaos Legionaries to represent the Fallen datasheet now. Rules-wise they were pretty bad already, to be honest. And perhaps one of the more unfortunate rumours about the release does appear to be true. It does seem that there's no jump pack option for the Chaos Lord, despite them selling it up to fairly recently. That's not going to be one that's going to make the Night Lords players very happy. Otherwise, it doesn't appear that there's any individual datasheet for the Cultist Firebrand, despite a stat line appearing in recently reboxed packaging. That is the big cultist guy with the flamethrower from the Blackstone Fortress cultists. It does seem that that datasheet was indeed just a remnant of the Blackstone Fortress release. In a more positive note, it seems that Chaos Marks are now the points cost upgrade for the Codex, in the same way that Codex Space Marines gets Chapter Command, for example. These things are apparently going to be able to be bought in for core and character units, though we haven't seen official confirmation on that yet, and the rules likely seem to be the same as the ones that were on Abaddon the Despoiler's datasheet that we've just talked about in the last video. +1 strength on the first round of combat for Khorne units, -1 to wound if you're wounding them on a 4+ or 2+ for Nurgle. The first failed save becomes 0 for Tzeentch and fights first for Slaanesh. If you really can apply that to just about every squad in the army, it could be interesting fielding either Chaos Undivided Force, making use of the best marks on the best ones, or going down a force that's just completely focused on one god. Finally, there are a few interesting sections in the new war gear that you can take. There's 2 interesting pieces of war gear that had slightly different names to before. Apparently you can take a Tainted Chain Axe on some squads, it appears to be a Sergeant upgrade on some units, and at a 5-point upgrade I suspect it's going to punch at least fairly hard. And the Reaper autocannon for the standard Chaos Space Marines has been renamed into a Havoc autocannon, so don't know if we're going to see a slightly different profile for that compared with the standard Reaper one. If we actually get into the points changes though, then let's start out with the core of the army in the troops, and it would appear that standard Chaos Space Marines are going to be 18 points per model, 6 points more than they were previously, and their squad size is 5 to 10. To me, 18 points does seem like a pretty decent price for Chaos Legionaries. Their bolter's only going to be hitting as hard as Tactical Marines for the Loyalists, but it seems that their melee is going to be better than Primaris Marines at the moment, as they get 3 attacks all the time, not just on the charge. 18 points looks pretty solid, particularly with Armour of Contempt, and I feel like they're going to be fairly tempting. Otherwise, we've got all the kill team upgrades here. We don't know yet whether or not you have to be able to be in a big squad to take them or not, or if just any squad can use them. The Balefire Tome is the Psyker upgrade for 20 points, which if it does give you a cast and deny like a lot of the other squad Psyker upgrades, then it looks like that could be well worth it. You can buy in a Chaos Icon for 5 points, and if the leaks on those icons are to be believed, then it looks like again that that's worth it as well. Apparently the Zinch one could give you an extra pip of AP at shooting, which would be a very solid upgrade on the squad. The Champion's Damage 2 Demon Blade costs 10 points, and that looks a bit borderline as to whether it'd be worth it. The Heavy Chain Axe, which is kind of Power Fist stats, is plus 10 points, that Tainted Chain Axe is 5 points, and the majority of the heavy weapons are plus 10, the Las Cannon Missile Launcher and Reaper Chain Cannon all being 15. Nice to see that the squad doesn't really seem to be losing any options. You can still take all the specials and things. Next up, we've got the Cultist Mob, which is the new name for the standard Cultists. 5 points per model, the same as before. The squad size slightly limited at 10 to 20 models, and the only upgrades that you can take for them are Grenade Launchers, Flamers, and Heavy Stubbers. They all cost 5 points. Now they're 40 points cheaper than the standard Chaos Legionaries. I suspect that they might have a bit more of a role again. If you just want a very cheap squad to sit on home field objectives, these seem reasonable. Finally, we've got the new and interesting Accursed Cultists that we talked about in the video around about 12 hours ago. The mutants are 6 points, supposedly for a Strength and Toughness 4 model with AP-1 in melee, and those Torments with the 3 wounds and 2d3 damage 2 attacks, they're 15 points. The profile for the mutant sounds kind of reasonable for 6 points, but the Torments for 15 sounds very good indeed. That would mean 150 points for a maxed out squad of 16 models, a reasonably tough and general purpose melee threat, plus they regenerate a few models each turn whenever you don't manage to wipe the squad out. Interestingly, you can take between 5 and 10 mutants. You've got to take at least 3 torments and can take up to 6. You can only include any more torments if you have 10 mutants in the squad as well. To me, this just sounds like they're trying to reflect the kit that they'll sell. It does seem like that kit's going to include 3 torments and 5 mutants in it. Next up, we've got the Army's Elites, and I think the Terminators are looking like another very interesting option, likely to be a big threatening unit for some very good buffs. They appear to be 33 points per model, so up 5 from the 28 they were before. And it's not listed just on the points cost page, but I'm presuming that the base armament is the Accursed Weapon and Combi Bolter. Literally every other upgrade that you can take for them costs 5 points, including things like Power Fists and Chain Fists. The Chaos icon doesn't appear to be listed here. I'd guess that maybe you have to swap out one of your weapons to get that, so it might not cost any more for that reason. Still though, looks solid, similar stats to the Loyalist ones, looking very nice with Armour of Contempt. Chosen are 25 points per model, a big up 11 points from the previous size, and their squad size is 5 to 10. It's an absolutely enormous points bump, but they are rumoured to be going to 3 wounds per model rather than 2, which might represent why they're so much more than Legionaries. Though perhaps the thing that surprises me the most about them is their combi weapons all seem to be an extra 10 points per model, which unless they do anything special besides just regular plasma or melter fire or something, just don't really seem like they'd be worth it. Otherwise, the only options in the unit are Chaos Icons or Plasma Pistols. Sadly, they don't have as many free options as they did before. You can't build entire squads of Chosen with Lightning Claws if you'd done that, and there's no options for heavy or special weapons. Again, very much looks like a case of them reflecting the kit that they're going to be selling. The flexibility is pretty much gone. Next, the Hellbrute is 105 points base, down 5 points from before, with its war gear costs unchanged. Hopefully that gets at least a little bit more scary. It is kind of an iconic Chaos unit. The Master of Executions has moved to the Elite slot from the HQ slot. He still costs 65 points, so maybe he's teeing himself up as a bit more of a champion type character. Noise Marines are up 5 points from 15, They cost 21 points now, and still do have to pay extra for their sonic weapons. The sonic blasters are an extra 5 points, doom sirens are 10, and blast masters have gone up to 15. I'd be very surprised if all of those weapons didn't see some significant profile boosts as well. Hopefully they'll still be able to bring the sonic pain well, even if they don't have a new kit. Otherwise, they're largely the same in terms of costs of war gear. They can still take most of the standard options. Finally, and another very exciting new redone unit, are the Possessed. They're 28 points per model, so up 8 from 20 that they were before, and their squad size is 5 to 10. Games Workshop previewed their stats already. They're toughness 5 and 3 wounds now, so very intimidating to face, and they've got a whole bunch of damage 2 attacks as well. They really do look like a big meaty unit for 28 points. They don't have any war gear options besides taking that Chaos icon, which again I strongly suspect will probably be an auto-include. Fast movers next, and the bikers go up 5 to 30 points to mirror their loyalist cousins. Their squad size is 3 to 9 now, and largely their weapon options are all similar. I guess the biggest differences are again the Chaos icon and the Tainted Chain Axe, both of which cost 5 points. Chaos Spawn are 25 points now. They're up 2 from where they were before, and I wonder whether they might get some slightly different stats to the Death Guard and the Thousand Suns ones, as they cost a little bit more than those now. You can still take them in squads of 1 to 5, so still a single spawn could be pretty annoying just by itself. The Venom Crawler has lost 5 points and has been moved to Fast Attack from Heavy Support. As you might expect, it's now rumoured to be faster with its new role, and it's a bit more melee focused with a weapon skill of 2+, or at least if the rumours are to be believed. Finally, for the Fast Attack, we've got the 2 units of Jump Packs. Raptors are 21 points, up 6 points. Their squad size is again reduced to 5 to 10. There's no icon option listed here for them, and they can take other normal war gear. To be honest, even if they just had the same base stats with 3 attacks, jump packs and chainswords, that still seems kind of interesting. Apparently they still get a -1 leadership rule up close. Finally, Warp Talons are up a big +8 points, 28 points per model. I'm sure they'll be a bit tankier with their invul save and 2 wounds. They don't have any war gear options at all. Moving on to heavy support, we've got really quite a lot of generic chaos options here. The Land Raiders, Predators, Vindicators, Defilers, Forge Fiends and Mauler Fiends are all present in the Thousand Suns book, and just looking at their points cost, it does seem that they're going to be in the same incarnation as in the Thousand Suns book. Land Raiders are the same. The Chaos Predator has been split up into the Annihilator and Destructor depending on the turret loadout. The Vindicator can pick up a Siege Shield for +10 points for +1 to your saves at range. The Defiler, Forge Fiend and Mauler Fiends all gain weapon skill and ballistic skill 3+. The Defiler's up 30 points, the Forge Fiend's up 25, though the Ectoplasmas are cheaper, and the Mauler Fiend remains unchanged, though the Lashadendrils now cost 10 points more. I feel like most of these things weren't super exciting for Thousand Suns. Their profiles aren't enormously great, I think. Maybe there'll be a few more synergies with some of the Chaos Legions that can actually make them work. I guess the Iron Warriors are probably the best hope, at least from the lore. Otherwise, for perhaps the more interesting heavy choices, the Havocs are 125 points per unit now, plus 40 points on the previous incarnation, and they remain locked to just 5 models in squad size. It appears though that they've had their heavy weapons lumped into their cost. It looks like things like Heavy Bolters and Reaper Autocannons are all just free to take now, you don't have to pay any more for them, and the Missile Launchers, Las Cannons and Reaper Chain Cannons only cost an extra 5 points each. At least based on that, if you were loading up with all the heavy weapons, then it looks like the squad isn't costing any different whatsoever for the exact same loadout, which I guess is probably good news as they'll be gaining 2 wounds each. I do wonder if they are just staying the same, then it might be to reflect them losing that stabilization talons rule, the one that allows them to move and fire with heavy weapons for no penalty. If not though, it looks like it'll just be a direct durability boost. Finally, the Obliterators have dropped 5 points. They remain in squad size 1 to 3 models, 90 points each now rather than 95. For the other units in their own slots, Helldrakes have gone up 15 points, again to mirror the Thousand Suns ones. Previously the weapons cost different, but now they don't. The Chaos Rhino is a dependable 80 points and is unchanged. The Noctilith Crown is up to 100 points. Supposedly this is going to give some sort of way that you can do an action to get command points now, so I guess that might be worth it if it's easy enough to do. And kind of interestingly, the Lord of Skulls has gained a massive 125 points. All the weapon options once more cost the same, so I can only assume that it's going to be getting some pretty mighty durability boosts if it really is going to be costing this much more. I must admit I'm not too hopeful for it being quite as good as it is at the moment. You can use quite a lot of interesting buffs on it now due to core not being a thing. My guess is that its base stats will get massively improved, but it might still wind up weaker overall because you can't do as many cool buffing things with it. Finally, last but not least, we come to the HQ section. We just talked about Abaddon the Despoiler's new datasheet in the previous video. He is looking very mighty indeed, and has gone up a cool 80 points to 300. He still looks absolutely insane though in terms of the amount of damage he can deal, and his buffing rules are pretty awesome, allowing Black Legion to reroll all hits and wounds with one core unit. Otherwise, let's run through the other HQs quickly. The Chaos Lord is 90 points, so plus 10 from previous. Looks like that'll probably be well worth it though if the stat line changes to the same as the Terminator one, who has also gone up 10. As I mentioned, it doesn't look like there's any jump back option for the Chaos Lord now. It's pretty annoying to have taken that away after it being a thing for a very long time. Otherwise, the vast majority of the HQ section is up just a little bit. Cypher's up 5, the Dark Apostles up 15, the Dark Com unit is the new unit that costs 100, and certainly looks potentially interesting if it can do prayers and psychic powers. The Exalted Champion has gained a big 15, so he costs the same as a Lord now, which is interesting, though I guess he doesn't have as much access to gear as he can't take anything different from his base loadout. Fabius Bile is in the book, he costs 90 points and is unchanged, the Acolytes don't cost any more, and apparently he will have some rules for creations of Bile in the army book. Harken World Claimer has got a very big relative points rise, he's gone all the way up to 150 points. He's pretty underwhelming at the moment, even for 95 points, so hopefully that's going to come with some absolutely crazy buffs. He's a really cool model with that jump back and spear. The new Demon Prince is kind of surprising that it's actually dropped in cost really quite a lot. 120 points for the base Demon Prince, so a fairly solid minus 30 points compared with the original one before. I don't know if that's going to come with some stat line nerfs or just maybe no upgrade whatsoever, but a 30 points reduction is really quite nice, and the model's quite cool too, I think. Otherwise the axe, sword and wings all remain the same cost, but he does have to take a Mark of Chaos for plus 15 points. I guess some of those are a bit more useful than others, though things like the Zinch one for ignoring the first failed save seems pretty good. Here on Blackheart, seen a sizable increase up to 140 points. I do wonder whether or not we'll get the new model for him that was rumoured. The Lord Discordant is down 20 to 175. Supposedly he's reducing in wounds as well, though it would mean that he'd be able to be screened. His war gear is free now. Lucius the Eternal is up to 120 points. The Master of Possession is up to 105 plus 10. The Sorcerer's gone up 5 to 95. And the Terminator Sorcerer is also up 5 to 110. It seems that the Terminator Sorcerer has now gained the option for taking a familiar along for 5 points, so it's interesting that that's now a bit of war gear rather than a stratagem. Finally, last but not least, the new Warp Smith is 80 points, up 15 from his 65 point very cheap version before, and if you do want to make him extra fighty, you can take a Thunder Hammer for plus 15. Overall, largely the HQ section is a bit more expensive. To be honest though, I strongly suspect that that's going to be more outweighed by some buffs to their wounds and melee profiles, and some reimagined and more useful buffing abilities besides. Overall, it's really quite cool to get such a big and comprehensive leak of chaos changes. I will admit it does look like there's some annoying things in with the good stuff. Losing jump back lords isn't great, the Cult Marines going elsewhere isn't helpful, and I feel like still a lot of the tanks and vehicles might still be very underwhelming. Still though, on the flip side, I think it's looking broadly good for the Accursed Cultists, the Legionaries, Terminators, New Possessed, and plenty of the others. Obviously we'll know more once we actually know the datasheets and aren't just working from points values alone. Anyway, I'll be interested to hear what you have to say. Please let me know down in the comments, and feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics if you'd like to see more like this. I'm sure we'll have more Chaos videos on the way very shortly, and a full review of the Codex as soon as we get details. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention the Auspex Tactics Patreon page, which is what allows me to keep on making videos like this quite so regularly. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early each week, regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some really big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.